Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. The budget that is before us today for approval is not the balanced budget that the Stormont House Agreement called for. Yes, the budget is balanced in the sense that it allocates money across the departments within the available resources, but it does little to make public finances more sustainable. So it's not a balanced approach to budgeting for the future. The Alliance Ministers opposed the budget at the Executive, but unlike other parties who voiced their opposition, our reasons go much wider than the direct impact on departments run by our own ministers. We believe Northern Ireland deserves a more strategic, more innovative and more radical approach. Alliance believes that in drawing up this budget, there should have been a fundamental reassessment of the need of each service and money then allocated to the departments on that basis. And before anyone suggests that there was no time to do this, of course there was. The Finance Minister himself has been warning for some time about the need to do more with less, yet we have not been planning on how best to do this. We know that there are inefficiencies in our health and education provision. High-level benchmarking of costs and spending profile compared to other jurisdictions highlights this, yet this budget does not challenge these inefficiencies. Rather, the large degree of protection to those budgets creates less incentive for reform. And before it's suggested that I don't want money to be spent in these areas, let me be clear. I want our health and education systems to be funded in such a way that will ensure the best quality of service for patients and pupils, where every pound is used to deliver the best outcomes, not where a proportion of every pound is being wasted. The Minister said in his opening remarks that this budget will lead to reforms, but there is nothing in these proposals that will ensure DHSS properly pursues its efficiency agenda. Health reforms need to be driven forward through investing in the way services are provided and in further prevention measures, not in using resources to simply plug gaps here and there. The budget also does nothing to ensure that education protections are directed into schools and away from administration. And this budget says nothing about tackling the cost of division, nothing about savings through North-South shared service delivery, and nothing about support for reforms to legal aid that will ultimately be necessary to make this budget balance. It's a budget that will leave us in exactly the same position this time next year. That's hardly moving Northern Ireland forward. So given that this is not a perfect budget, what specifically would Alliance do differently? Firstly, the economy is supposedly the top priority within the programme for government. So more consideration needs to be given to the wider economic impact of the specific departmental reductions. For example, we know the importance of the availability of third-level talent for attracting FDI and building our economy. We would therefore have rebalanced resources between the Department of Education and the Department for Employment and Learning, giving DEL more money in recognition of the importance of the skills agenda. As things stand, this budget makes DEL, which is an already inefficient department, make greater cuts than the Department of Education. DEL could end up cutting higher and further education places at the same time as DE presides over 70,000 empty school places. There are no empty places in higher and further education. Alliance would also abolish the Social Investment Fund, which needlessly duplicates what other departments could already do. Alliance would halt the relocation of the DARD headquarters to Ballykelly. At a time of limited public resources, the cost of this project needs to be redirected to frontline services. Alliance would also have included a commitment to remove certain inappropriate populist subsidies, and I make no apology for being honest with the public about these things. Free prescriptions for those who cannot afford to pay and free bus passes for those who haven't yet retired are simply not sustainable. And only by considering these options can we as a devolved administration show that we are taking some real responsibility in managing the budgetary challenges. Of course, when I raised this with the Finance Minister last week, he did his best to twist my words and to suggest that we want to take away bus passes completely, which is, of course, no, I've got quite a lot to get through, thanks. It's, of course, wrong. As in the long term, we would actually like to see free public transport for school children also. The additional health and social benefits of this could provide savings in other areas, but such a policy can only be taken forward when we get our finances in better order. We would also propose a modest increase in the regional rate. A 1% rise would raise about £5 million, and the removal of rates capping, with new measures to support the asset-rich and income poor, such as pensioners, could raise another £5 million. These are all things that could have been taken forward in the incoming financial year. I know that the Finance Minister has said that he is proud that we continue to have the lowest household taxes in the UK. But would he not be more proud if our public services were so efficiently run that in keeping the taxes low, we didn't have to cut services to do it? A sensible approach would be to offset some of the cuts at the moment with a small proportion of revenue raising. But fair revenue raising structures must go hand in hand with other reforms. It's a major challenge, but one that the people of Northern Ireland expect our executive to deliver on. Mr Deputy Speaker, the Stormont House Agreement also stated there should be an independent audit of departmental spending to identify how divisions in society impact on the delivery of goods, facilities and services, and then to consider how best to reconfigure service delivery in a manner consistent with a shared future. Alliance is once again calling for this independent audit to be a formal executive commitment in the 2015-16 budget. The Finance Minister suggested last week that he would be out on the doorsteps telling people about Alliance's revenue-raising ideas. Well, perhaps he could also take the opportunity to remind the people of Northern Ireland of his party's revenue-wasting approach. Taxpayers' money continually wasted by sustaining a divided society. Of course, I know that a one-year budget will not be the place where all of these problems are solved. However, in setting this budget, we must also consider the 2016-20 budget, which could see an even smaller block grant, as well as the potential added pressure of funding a lower level of corporation tax. This budget therefore must lay the groundwork for much more radical reform that will deliver better outcomes for all in Northern Ireland. The Executive still has the opportunity to make further improvements, and I hope that they will take the opportunity to do so. Thank you.
I now call Martin O'Mullion.